Everyone, and welcome to the Brightside Live. My name is Michele Katz, and I'm the founder of the Plus One Adoption Foundation. Today, we're going to be focused on adoption and mentorship for older children. And I'm inviting the founder of this organization that's 25 years old already. And we're going to talk about how Randi Thompson, the founder of this magnificent organization, was inspired to create it in the first place. The great work that Kidsave is doing. So I have sent the invite. I see her coming on. I am so proud of us for getting this done.
Oh, that's very sad.
No, it's wonderful. I was just going to mention a little bit about the Brightside Live. This is our way of giving back to the adoption community by focusing on someone every month that touches the adoption community in some positive way. And Randi Thompson, you are absolutely doing that and have been doing that for decades. So we're thrilled. And for those that aren't familiar with the Plus One Adoption Foundation, our foundation was created almost 5 years ago now because of my experience with adoption, and I was so inspired. That's a story for another day, which you can see on our website, www.plusoneadoption.org. And we're going to be focusing today on the adoption and mentorship of older youth because that is a much forgotten group of kids. And I think Randi would agree with that.
Absolutely. And people are, when they're thinking about adoption, they're looking at, and when they say older, a lot of times people are talking about 4 and 6 years old. And what we're talking about when we say older children is really kids that are 9 to 18, mostly teenagers. Kids who've been in the system a while, kids who have really been forgotten.
So let's go back in time.
Sure.
Sometimes I know we want to do that. Okay.
Mhm.
So can you please tell us what first inspired you to create Kidsave? And of course, tell us why older youth became the heart of this mission.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I'm an adoptive parent myself, so that probably made me a little more attuned to the needs of kids. But honestly, it was sort of serendipitous. I was traveling internationally. I was working in Kazakhstan. I had the opportunity to go to an orphanage after my business partner had adopted a child in Russia, a baby at that time. But I went to an orphanage that had older kids in it. And what I saw was such despair, such languishing in care, no, no future projection for those kids. And once you see that, you really can't unsee it. I mean, I hadn't planned to start an organization. I was a marketing communications person. And originally, we just tried to see what we could do to help whoever was trying to get these kids out of institutions and into families with maybe using some marketing communications. But we looked at a lot of people who were starting orphanages. That was not the goal. People who were trying to give support to that, and people who were coming in and adopting the babies. And so we really decided we had to do something to bring these kids back in the community where they could meet and get to know people and where they could be seen so that it was impossible to forget.
So this all started from a business trip.
Well, it started really because my co-founder had adopted a baby in Russia and told me the stories about how awful it was with children with shaved heads sitting in cribs.
Understood.
And when I was on a trip to Kazakhstan, I took the opportunity to go to an orphanage myself, and it wasn't one for babies, it was one for older kids. And what I saw was really so much worse because it was just this loss of human potential. And, in our world, as adopted parents, we thought people wanted kids. There seemed like everybody wanted the kids, but then there were all these children that nobody was even thinking about. And after trying to do some pro bono consulting and some services for people and finding that this area was not being addressed, we finally decided to start Kidsave.
So this older youth group is really ages, say, 9 through 17, more or
Right,
less. Okay.
right.
Because those kids become less
There-
desirable for adoption. If I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's harder. It seems to be that most people are looking for younger children, babies.
Always, because they think that, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of myth, there's a lot of assumptions about older children. Are these kids so damaged? Do these kids even want families? And quite frankly, some of the kids, by the time they get to us, some of our kids locally, they're not so sure they want to trust an adult because they've had so many disappointments in their lives. But people are really, they don't know. They've heard all these stories. And so um, if they could just meet them, then they would see that, what they see on paper is not what these children are. These kids are remarkably resilient. I often think if you or I had to put up with some of the things that these children have had to deal with in their lives, with multiple moves and loss and, being stripped from the only family they knew and ending up with in congregate care, it's enough to fell any person. And these kids are still standing. They are remarkably, remarkably resilient. And they're just waiting for the person who's going to help to bring that out in them.
So imagine you're in an orphanage, say overseas, and you reach 17. What does that mean for you in most countries?
In most countries, typically you are on the street without resources. You may have some housing. You may have some opportunity to go to school, as we do here. But if you don't have a consistent, caring individual in your life to help you, Um, even, my kids at 25 were calling me for things that these kids don't have anybody to call on. And so they're really on their own. And because they're on their own, they tend to fall through the cracks. If they get into school, then, where do they go on the weekends? Where do they go in the holidays? They don't have someone that they can count. Who tells you to do your homework? Who tells you to make sure you're registered for classes? Those are the kinds of things. But often they're on the street. I mean, the worst, they're on the street. They're pregnant before age 20. They're using emergency rooms. They're homeless and sometimes end up incarcerated. And their outcomes are terrible. And we don't have to have that be the case for these kids.
That's right. And you have two adopted children, correct?
I do. Grown
And
children
both
at this point.
both from Kazakhstan?
No, both of my kids were adopted domestically. I
Oh,
have I
domestically.
have
Okay.
I have children that I adopted domestically.
Okay.
But the
Well, I have a
kids that,
question about
yeah,
that, if I may. And that is, okay, so we were talking about overseas and what happens that, you kind of age out of the orphanage system overseas. Orphanages aren't as much a thing here. We do, it's not like that anymore. It's more foster care.
right.
Isn't that right? And
Eh,
so what happens then in the US?
Well, in the U.S., we have supports. We have things that are supposed. First of all, kids can stay in extended foster care in many cases until they're 21. There is support for education. But again, if you don't have somebody who's guiding you, who's helping you, most of these kids want to go to college, but 3% graduate from college. So it's a very small number. So essentially what's happening to kids is even if they have some housing, they tend to not be able to make it to that next step. They're having the same outcomes as third world and emerging democracies. They're just not being able to succeed unless they have a strong mentor or the opportunity to move back into a family.
Okay, so tell us, if you don't mind, a little bit about your journey into adoption.
Oh, my journey was pretty simple. I was at that stage where I said, "Oh, I could,"
It's just that easy.
it was so easy for me.
Ah,
It actually was. Mine was a very serendipitous kind of a thing, and my
great.
children were babies, but I was open to international, domestic. I married someone who decided had a vasectomy many years before I met him, so adoption was really the option for us, and I was very fortunate in that things just sort of opened up. But I did notice when I was working with the local Department of Children and Family Services, the way that they positioned the kids was such a half-empty glass. It was all about the deficits. It was all about the challenges. It was all about the issues with the kids rather than looking at them as beings with potential.
Mhm.
I remember that being so sad at the way that the children were being described, um, that I figured you have to do something different. You have to be able to tell the stories of these children differently. What they look like on paper is not who they are. So that was really the start of Kidsave. As I said, my adoption journey was actually very simple. I met someone who was pregnant, and decided that I would be a good parent. The second time, it was as easy. It's just like my kids. I always felt like they were supposed to come to me. Not that not that it was easy. Adoption is not easy. Parenting's not easy.
Right.
But it was the best decision that I ever made, certainly. And my children are the most important people in the world to me. Um, but I thought I was done. My journey, I thought that was it. I had my family and I was done. And it wasn't until I ended up seeing all these older kids. And when I saw these kids at this orphanage, I guess my children were 8 and 11. And in looking, I remember the face of a little girl in that orphanage. And her eyes were so sad. And I thought, you know, this could be my kids. There but for the grace, this could be my children. And just knew I had to do something about it. And the idea that KidSave has is that we take kids that people are not thinking of first. You're thinking of the baby or you're thinking of the 4-year-old. And then you take these kids and you bring them back in the community. So meeting in community is super important to our model. You bring them in, they meet people who either are interested in adopting or want to help. With our weekend program, we have people who host with the idea that they might be an adoptive parent for that child, but they also meet the kids where they are. Our kids, a lot of them want to come in. They're not so sure that they want an adoptive parent. So a lot of families host to mentor, and they're able to have those kids in their homes on weekends, meeting people. It's very different than your typical putting your application blind and see what comes to you. Uh, with our summer program, our Summer Miracles program, families get to host children in their homes for 5 weeks. And a lot of families come to us wanting to be advocates. They're not wanting necessarily to adopt, but they're giving that child the opportunity to travel. They're giving that child the opportunity to show themselves as much more than what they are on paper.
And also, I mean, just this lifetime experience of leaving wherever, where they, I mean, because otherwise, how would they travel?
Most of the kids have never been on an airplane. Most of the
Exactly.
kids have no idea. I mean, we practice that before they come because
Hmm.
they go to a plane, they get on it, they sit down, so that it's not so frightening to them. I mean, when
Yeah.
we first did this program 25 years ago, children would get off the planes and they would look like, just deer in headlights. When our
Hmm.
kids from Columbia come off those planes, they've had 2 weeks of orientation. They've all met each other. They've met the chaperone that will travel with them. So they're a pretty tightly bonded little group. They feel secure when they get off that plane. And then they've had the opportunity families have sent letters and they've showed them videos of their homes. So they're not walking into this like deer in headlights. They're not walking in blind. They've had a lot of back and forth to know a little bit about the family and the family about them before they actually are staying with them for those 5 weeks.
So some of the people that apply, they're just interested in hosting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are
Absolutely.
some
Some apply because they want to help a child, just as some of the people who host in our local programs for our local kids apply just to mentor a child. And then there's the other group that is really hoping that this will be the start or the completion of their family.
so that kind of the idea of like a foster to adopt type of
Well, it's to
scenario.
me the children all come in with the idea that they're going to have a really wonderful cultural experience. They get to do a tremendous amount. They do a lot of activities together. They do a lot of activities with their families. So they're not coming in with the idea that they're going into a foster adopt situation. But they do know when they come that they might meet someone who might become a family for them. Not necessarily their host, because the last thing you want is to have those expectations set up.
Right.
And it is, we sometimes have kids that come in and they don't really feel comfortable in that family. It's not really the right match. But so often, and we have amazing success rate at getting these kids into families. I mean, last year, I think almost 90% of the kids that came ended up with families that were applying to adopt them.
Oh, that's incredible. So that was okay. So that was the 5 week summer program,
That was last
90%
year. Yeah.
last
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yep.
So just as 2025, just this past summer.
Yes.
So that's incredible stats. Now, did those kids, were they feel the 90%, did they then stay with the host family or were there no other
No.
families? I see your
No.
hand. Yeah.
Oh, they might have
Got it.
stayed with the host family. No, they could have all stayed with the host family, but I don't remember. It's usually about, I don't know, 70% of the host families may end up adopting them if
Oh,
they were going
interesting.
in
Okay.
with the if they were going in with the idea that they wanted to adopt. It changes every year. It
Of
changes with
course.
who the kids are. It changes, but over the years, 80% of all the kids that have traveled have found families that wanted to adopt them. And that's a really high statistic. And these are kids that were sitting in without any options for family because we don't get the kids referred to us if there are adoption applications in, obviously. So we're getting the
Right.
kids that if they didn't come, would probably not find a family.
You mentioned Colombia.
hmm
What other countries are you connected with?
Colum- Colombia is the only country that we are
Okay.
bringing children for summer miracles from. We work in other countries. We work in Sierra Leone. We work in Ukraine, but in those cases, we're working to find families for those children in their own country. And then, of course, we work in the U.S. where we're doing the same thing. We have programs in Los Angeles, in Virginia, and in Houston, and those programs are monthly. They go every month. People have the opportunity to come in, meet kids, host them in the US, it's hosting on weekends rather than for 5 weeks at a time. But it's a slower pace in some ways because you're only
Mhm.
coming in once a month, and we're also working really at that child's pace. Some of these kids are coming in from different levels of readiness for adoption or even for a connection.
So I love that you do this like prep for the not just the internationals, but in particular with the whole like flying on an airplane.
Yeah.
Just a quick anecdote. My eldest is adopted from Colombia. She was an
Oh.
infant though when we adopted her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then I carried my boys, and then we wanted to adopt again, and we had this feeling, this desire to adopt an older child. We were kind of thinking like you were saying, like, maybe 5 years old, something like that. But we were told that there was a little girl who became available. She was 7 years old, and we were like, okay, I mean, that sounds good.
That's great.
Let's Yeah, let's try that out. So it's a very different experience adopting an older child. So when we get to Colombia,
Mhm.
she was just turned 8 years old by this point. Okay. Um, and we met her for the first time. She jumped into my arms. I mean, it was like
Oh,
this incredibly emotional experience. We had done a video call with her once prior, and also we had sent a photo album
right.
of all of us and the dogs and the grandparents and like close members of the family, and we sent it down to Colombia so that she could, and she was bragging to all her friends, look at my family, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah.
Sure.
Okay. But I don't think she got the prep you're talking about because when we left the orphanage and just went to our hotel across town, she said, are we in, I mean, in Spanish, but she's asking me, are we in Chicago?
Chicago. Oh, no,
And
she
I'm like,
probably.
oh no, my dear. And we showed her on, I mean, showed her on the map and everything. But still, the kids, they don't grasp that concept. So, how do you train these? I mean, how do you not train, but like, how do you
Prepare.
prep, right? These kids, because they don't necessarily understand even the words you're speaking, the distances on a map, they don't necessarily understand.
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, in our summer program, we bring the kids to a one location for 2 weeks prior to their visit. So they spend a lot of time. They spend time getting some language. They learn a little bit about the city that they're going to or the area that they're going to. They learn, this much English, of course, and they can say their name and they can count to 10, but they get some familiarity with things. You're trying to take away as many of the fear factor barriers for them, and to make them as comfortable, which is also, again, they're coming in a group. They're all on a plane together. They understand that they're going to be traveling a long time. They have a really, I can't say enough about how good the Colombian social child welfare system is, really. I mean,
Yeah.
they have caregivers, they have chaperones that are psychologists and social workers that are traveling with
Hmm.
these kids. So they're there if they have meltdowns, which sometimes occur because
Of course.
can you imagine traveling to another country? You'd never been on a plane. You'd never really been out of an orphanage or a foster family. A lot of kids in Colombia are living in foster families. So they will, but so they've had that family experience before in some cases, but still, not coming into city if you'd been in a country. That's probably the biggest.
Mhm.
You get kids that have lived in the country all their lives and they're in Los Angeles or they're in Chicago. And
Right.
that's a big, big difference. So
And
we,
language. I mean,
right.
just the language. Yeah.
Language. We are now, Columbia is now requiring for families to adopt, they probably didn't do this when you were there, that have some level of language proficiency, that they take some Spanish language classes before they adopt, because they recognize how important, particularly if it's an older child. They want to tell you things. And there's been a lot of advances with the translators, and because we have kids with, those eye translators all the time, going back and forth.
Technology.
Yep.
Technology.
It used
When it
to be,
works
we
for us, it's great.
Exactly. We used to have people on call, and we still have people on call in the summer because what we're trying to do is really make sure that we're making the children feel as comfortable so they can present really their authentic selves to make sure that this is something that is going to be a good match for them and for the family as well.
So how do people find out about the program, whether they want to mentor versus, have
Sure.
a potential adoption? How do they find out about you?
Well, they can go right to kidsave.org, and we're not allowed to show photos of our Colombian kids this year
Okay.
on the website. If you're looking at the summer program, you would go to the website. They'll tell stories about who some of the kids are, but also it goes through all the processes of how you can apply to be part of this. We also have orientations I think every 2 weeks. For this summer, I think we have another 6 weeks before applications need to be in. And it doesn't have to be a full home study. It has to be a hosting study. But we have trainings. We train on advocacy because all of our families need to be advocates for the kids and for all the rest of the children who are traveling. They do have to go through a child welfare training with their agencies, but and we partner with licensed adoption agencies who then would do the adoption part if they ended up going forward to adopt. But
So
they'll
if
do a
someone,
mini study.
yeah,
And so
doesn't have any of that and they need like the checklist, okay, there's someone at KidSave that can
absolutely,
walk them
they
through the
can.
process. Okay.
Right. They could go to Erica at Kidsave with ERIKA at kidsave.org, and she would set up a call. They can also book a call on our website to learn more about the program. They just book a call so that someone can talk to them. They'll do better than I in terms of getting on the call, I promise.
No, you're fantastic. So now, the great thing is, see, we don't give up.
That's
That's the great
right.
thing.
I think that's
Um,
the adopted parents are like that. They don't give up.
that's exactly. So, is there a fee, or how does the financial piece work, if any?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the domestically, of course, if you were going to participate in one of our local programs, there's no fee at all. People have to get live scanned. Internationally, there is a fee because it's so costly for us to bring the kids and to do all the things. So families have an application fee, and then there is a hosting fee that they have to pay, and that is the application fee. I think is well, I'm not going to get this. It's either 175 or 250, but then the hosting fee is, I believe, $2,750 for the host for those 5 weeks. And then we pay for the transportation for the kids. We get the kids here. We do all the orientation of them before. We host events every weekend while the children are here so that they can get together. And so they will have the amount of advocacy because families that are not hosting can come and meet kids. It's also a great way to find out about the program. If someone's just starting to think about it, they could go and see one of the summer events and start to get to meet the kids and the families who are there. Meeting the families is as important as the kids because
Yes.
people who've been doing this for a while have so much wisdom to share. As an adoptive
Oh,
parent,
yes.
you learned a lot along the way, right?
Yes, yes. That specifically with adoption, little like there are definitely tips and tricks, right? Is that we share like the life
Yes.
hacks. I was at a networking group and it was all like working moms, and that's how we did our intro. Like most business meetings, it's like I do this and da da da, for this many years, and in this networking meeting, you are actually saying, like, these are my kids. I mean, I do this, but these are my kids. And my life hack, my parenting life hack is.
Oh, that's great.
It's really, it's a unique, it's a great group. But I feel like when you're talking with adoptive parents, there's also a lot of head nodding,
Oh,
especially
yeah,
if you have, yeah, it's like just some unique things that might present themselves that other parents can help with. So it's great having a parent network.
absolutely.
Um,
And because they're
yeah.
meeting, our groups tend to stay together. They met, their kids came in the same time, they met at the same time. And the same thing with our local kids. They're meeting families and kids together, and so they stay together. So you've got that ability. Is this normal? Is this what your kid does? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And some of it is just across the board. However, like whether they're biological kids or not, and others are like, oh, yeah, our kid did this and it seems to be unique too. I don't know. I
Right,
mean, I'm just saying it can be.
right.
And I know just from our experience, because we were in country um, for a while, there was a strike when we adopted our
Oh,
infant, our eldest. And we really bonded with the families that were staying at we were staying at like an adoption hotel. It was
sure,
like a
sure.
bed and breakfast
Yep.
type of scenario where we had our meals together. They'd ring a
Hmm.
bell for the various meals. It was like included in your like nightly stay and that sort of
Right,
thing.
right.
Still to this day, we are connected with those families.
Absolutely. I mean, and if you think about adopting in isolation, and you weren't, a lot of people who are in our programs maybe haven't parented before. A lot of people have delayed the parenting because of careers, and so they don't have a natural peer group that would, if you have your babies and you're going to baby classes and all that, there's no natural peer group. So having the people that you met in community, the people that you met along that journey is really important. And it's important for the kids too, that they get to keep some of those contacts. A lot of we have a kid who just married one of the kids that he came in with years ago. The two that
Oh,
were, yes, they were adopted in Minneapolis, I think, and they ended up years later marrying,
oh my gosh,
which
that's
is,
what a beautiful what a beautiful story and a
yeah, it's
neat
absolutely
connection.
great. Yes.
We I mean that's where our group of because our original from that first adoption, our agency was in Minnesota. So that's where our group of friends, I mean, we were going to Minneapolis every summer
Oh,
to
yeah.
visit. Yeah, absolutely. The kids are in like the chat, like in like their own
Yes.
chat together. So I do think community is vital. And also, why do it alone? Like you
Right.
learn so much from other people. What I remember, one of the other parents, they were all on their seconds. They were adopting their second Colombian
Right.
child, and we were there for our first child, first everything. And they were the ones who taught us how to like make the bottle. And, it's like, I mean, you
Right.
get the call and you jump on a plane. It's
Exactly.
not, some people maybe that did a lot of, babysitting of it, what maybe, but not everyone. And
Right.
even so, there's always so much more to learn.
So much. And then again, with older kids, you really need that parent, that support,
Mhm.
the others, that for the kids and the families to know that what they're doing, what they're going through as they're moving into that connected relationship, and the fears that they have and the fears that the child have are all normal. And the pushback, you're not getting some of those with babies, but these are, older kids have feelings, they have histories, they have things to state, they have
They
trauma,
have memories.
they
I
have
mean,
memories.
with
Yes.
memories. And they may
And
not even be able to articulate my from my experience, because still, like our youngest was only 8. I mean, it's
right,
still older, of course,
right,
but
right,
but even how to articulate feelings.
right.
So
And language being such a challenge. That's why I think it really is. I'm glad that the Colombian government is saying, come on now, you need to have some language proficiency. You have to have some ability to be able, you can't put it all on the child. It's really important because they have to be able to express what's going on.
yeah, no, understood. And it actually makes the attachment easier,
Sure.
like more smoother, because we do speak Spanish, and so we when we were in country, I asked our liaison, you know, what are you seeing from the outside? How do you think she's doing? And she mentioned the language piece, that she can definitely tell a difference
Oh,
in
sure.
how quickly we were able to mesh, right?
Right.
Meld together as a family. I mean, when we adopted our youngest, we already had three older children, right? So it's not just parent to child, but also between siblings.
Absolutely. And your kids spoke the language as well, right? Yeah, which makes
Enough.
huge difference.
Like,
Enough.
yes, we're
Right. I
not
mean,
saying you have to be fluent. I'm not even fluent,
no, no, no.
but like, but still, but enough. And it doesn't even have to be a huge amount, but enough. Whatever that is, is
And
probably
enough.
varies, but
And as I said, these translators have helped so much, these handhelds to really,
yeah.
and,
And we didn't have that. So
yeah, it
that's,
makes
yeah.
such a difference, and we'll see, and kids also will, at our events, they'll come up and they'll grab a translator if they really want to talk to someone and say, I'm not getting it across to my family, and they'll go and then they'll have these back and forth. But it's also, giving those kids agency, giving them a voice in what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
The kids have the ability to say what they're thinking, and that's why it's so they have a lot of thoughts. And Colombian kids are um, they're pretty expressive compared to some other groups of children. They tend to let you know what they're feeling. More often than some other cultures, and they need that warmth and that communications to be able to do the bonding. So having the language definitely helps. But we see it with our kids too. I mean, the idea that they have a choice, they're able to tell you what they're thinking, they're able to tell their chaperones what they're thinking about, even the families that they're spending time with, so that this isn't just something that you're forcing a child to do. It's something that the child is also coming along hand in hand and part of that decision as they build that trust and that bonding over time.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it goes so quick. We have to wrap up, but I do have one last question for you.
Sure.
And it has to do with, we talk about shifting the mindset. People have preconceived notions, fears. How does one shift their mindset to be open to considering older children?
I think they have to look for opportunities to meet them. I think that's when they meet children, and access is always the issue, but when they have the opportunity to meet and get to know an older child, those feelings often slip away. People who say the most. I used to have, and when we brought younger kids often with our prior programs in the early years, and that's another thing that obviously people are adopting older children because more and more and more kids are getting adopted. But people will come in, they'll say, I want a 5-year old, and they meet a 12-year old. And that is the person that they click with. And it goes the other way too. Kids will say, I could only have this kind of parent. I could only have, and I'm not open to LGBTQ parents.
Hmm.
And then they meet a parent and they say, I really liked those people. I say, well,
Mhm.
you said this. Well, but I like them. It's once you strip away the barriers. I think having them have the opportunity, if they're just thinking about it, they don't have to come in with the idea of adopting. They could come in with the idea of hosting if they want to help and see if it's for them. It's not for everybody, as you know. Adoptive parenting is not for everyone. It's you have to have that tenacity that we talked about earlier. You have to be willing to not take it personally, particularly with an older child, because it's not about you. It's about what they're going through. And you have to, if you're, if they finally believe that you're there for them unconditionally and that you're going to stay, then you can break through. But I think being open to at least meeting and putting yourself out there where you have the opportunity to see if parenting an older child would work for you.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing all this. And it's so vital with the work you're doing. I want to thank you for being here.
For finally,
I'm so glad. Yes, not giving up, right? We did it. And I hope to have you on again.
I'd love to
Um,
come on. Now
Yeah,
that
I
I know how
really
to do
think,
it.
yeah, I think we should do it. And because there's so much more to learn. It would be really, really great to have you on. And thanks to everyone who has listened in or is going to check this out later on the grid. We hope that you found this session inspiring. And no doubt there's someone you know who, if they're not connected with us, please share it with them. Be sure to like, follow, share the Plus One Adoption Foundation lives. We have a lot of lives on the grid. So I'm sure you enjoyed this one. Scroll down, you see a split screen like this one. That's it. If you're interested in helping the Plus One Adoption Foundation community with our mission, then you can click in the link in our bio or always visit us on good old fashioned website, plusoneadoption.org. There's various ways to donate as well and get involved. Of course, DM us if you have questions. DM us. In the notes for this, we'll include information about Kidsave so that you can find Randi and her amazing colleagues. And thank you, Randi. Thank you all for being a part of the Plus One community. We love and appreciate you all.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate being on, and remind people that there's still time if they wanted to host for the summer to reach out to us at kidsave.org.
That's amazing. Thank you. And is there a particular deadline on that for those of us that are very deadline driven?
Yeah, we're trying to get applications in by March 1st, possibly just a little bit later than that. But then, because you have to match families and kids and they've got to go through all the approvals. So March
Okay.
1st is a good target.
Okay, very good. So you have a little bit of time, but not too much time. And so please check that out. And we look forward to seeing you on the next live. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks again. Bye now.